I'm co-host James Ash.
And I'm co-host Phil Scaife.
Welcome to the Business Lockdown. Welcome to the Business Lockdown, and welcome once again our good friend Jonathan Leafe. How are you doing, Jonathan?
Good morning. Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Morning, Jonathan.
Good morning, Phil.
So we find ourselves on our third episode, which is actually your fourth official episode because we did your intro episode. So for those people out there that haven't seen Jonathan's first episode with us, find out he's CEO, business coach, ran a very successful digital media marketing company called Strawberry in East Riding of Yorkshire. That's successful. Now he works with a number of companies, showing them how to be another Strawberry, another successful dynamic marketing agency. So that was a great episode. And then we moved on to the next episode, which was the first of a four-part series, which was Business Resilience, Building a Bulletproof Business. Incredible episode. Last week, we switched it a bit, and unfortunately, Phil wasn't able to make it. And so rather than continuing our schedule, we wanted to postpone that so all three of us could come back to it. And I was just saying that before we press the record with Jonathan, I really enjoyed that. It was just like, Jonathan had created an article. It was all about animal instinct and people's personalities within this current climate, within business as normal. And are you a bear, a meerkat, or a deer? So that was a great episode, looking at those people's behaviours and how they're responding, how proactive they are under these current circumstances and under these uncertain times. So great episode. Whereas today we come back to our structured series, and it's retreating to the core, ready to go again. Next episode next week will be our final of our four-part series, and that's going for high growth after lockdown. But before we touch on that anymore, let's look at retreating to the core, ready to go again, Jonathan, and particularly how are you working on this subject with your clients right now?
Yeah, I mean, this is like obviously it's very, very apt that we're talking about it now because a lot of businesses have been shut, or a lot of businesses have got smaller all of a sudden, and they're also like wondering what we should do. I know we're going to cover on sort of like going for high growth next time, but I think actually all businesses should do this anyway. They should probably do it every year or every 2 years or every 5 years, whatever, because a lot of businesses get a little bit fat. And I say that because most businesses have a number of income streams. I'm just going to give you an example in the agency world. There's three main income streams within agencies. There's one-off projects, there's retainer or regular clients that you might have, and then there's long-term repeat billing. So you might look after someone's website or do their domains or their hosting or something like that, and just bills that you just send out repeatedly. So all of those income streams go into the whole. But the most important about these income streams is they are not the same, because some of those income streams will have a lot more effort required to generate that income. Some of the income streams might have predictability, they might not have predictability, and all of those income streams will have a very, very different level of profitability. And I think that's an agency example, but you can also put that onto a manufacturer, because a manufacturer in their warehouse or a retailer, they will have fast moving stock that comes in and just goes straight out. They'll have slow moving stock which they have to stockpile because they have to buy it in bulk or they can't get hold of it or whatever. So it's slow moving stock. And then they'll have redundant stock or sale stock. And all of those, again, that stock will have very different characteristics. But the problem that most business owners have is that they just chuck all of this income into a pot, and then they take their expenses out, their staff, their running costs, their costs, and they're left with a net profit. And they think, well, is that okay? Yeah, right, let's get on with it. But actually, if they retreated to the core and started to pull the layers of the onion off and say, well, actually, hang on a minute, let's just look at all of these income streams individually, and let's work out if they're easy to do. Let's work out how valid they are now. Let's try and work out what profit they generate for the business. And then it's a totally different business model you've got. So, I mean, most people are too wrapped in their business, and it's hard to fix business, when the wheels are moving at speed, you just get on with it. But now when things have slowed down a bit and you can get on the bus and really have a proper look at what's going on, then these are the things that you should be looking at.
So have you worked with a client during this period? Have you got like an example of where you've done this sort of analysis?
Yeah, absolutely. I have. In fact, it just so happened that I was just doing the analysis when lockdown happened.
Right.
So we carried it on, and so their profitability, just on three things, for example, on their projects, their profitability was minus 10%, because a project are notoriously difficult to do, because they have mission creep, or they have feature bloat, or they have a fixed price, but things go awry and things like that. So there's always problems with doing a one-off project. Then we had a look at their regular work and their retained work. And yeah, that profitability was about 20-25%, sort of what you'd expect. It's manageable, you can get into it, but their long-term repeat billings for all of their asset billings and domain billings like this, 100% profit. So you can see what I'm saying. So they were focused, that they just thought everything was just bundled in. Yeah. They'd never taken the time to stop and actually look at their individual profit levels. So that leads you into a situation where, I mean, this goes for every business. Whatever you start off, you've got to build in some type of long-term residual income. You know, there's a friend of mine, and you'll know him as well, James, Andrew Horncastle. And I remember having a chat with him once, and he just said he was going his business about 5-6 years ago. He was worried about his business, what he was doing. Went away to Mallorca for a couple of months and read loads of books, and came back and said, my business in the future is collecting rent. So he completely and utterly reorganized his business just so he could collect rent. I mean, it was just, so basically what you were saying, predictable revenue.
Yeah. So
that is the core of your business. You get that right and you can do anything with it.
So does this link into like an 80-20 kind of analysis?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Pareto law, the 80-20, the 80-20 rule just applies to everything, doesn't it? I mean, you'll get 80% of your business from 20% of your clients. You'll get 80% of your profit from 20% of your business. And so it goes on. I mean, it's never exactly 80-20, but it's amazing how often that law applies. We all know that in our businesses. But when things are going well, most business owners are quite happy just to let things bloat, because it's easy. The income's coming in, the profit's it's there, it's enough. We're too busy to actually get on the bus and sort it out. So they just let it roll. And then actually it's when problems happen like this, then suddenly that's when they can potentially have problems if they're not aware of where their business is producing the revenues or the profits.
Yeah.
Based on that, I've got a kind of a three-part series of kind of questions, and I'd love you to give insight. The first one, which we covered on a previous episode, but it'd be good to refresh, and also people who haven't seen a previous episode, is about pitching for clients, especially in the agency world. And I know, Strawberry, you didn't do that, and we covered that on why you didn't do that and the implications of that. So that'd be first one in terms of why you didn't pitch, because there's many people that just believe that's the industry. You need to be in it to win it, and what's involved in that. Two is then, again, from an agency point of view, a client amends and changes. You know, if you've agreed a project and a client keeps coming back and changing their mind and making changes on that project, how that affects profitability. And I know you're smiling there. So, and number three, which actually is a topic yesterday I was speaking with our team about, is sacking your customers, which sounds crazy when you think of that as a title. But, you know, speak about what you've just spoke about a business being too fat and not having profitability. You know, it's important to sack your customers. So if we can go through those, Jonathan: pitching and why you didn't at Strawberry; two, client changing and amends, and where you set your stall out, the rules and guidelines to that; and three, firing and sacking your customers.
Pitching's a weird thing, because it is very industry standard, and clients will, new clients potentially will come to you and say, well, we're going to speak to three agencies and we want you to pitch to us your ideas and things like that, which is nonsensical to start off with, is it? Because the premise of pitching is the agency gets very excited and they'll get their pitch team onto it, which is generally their A team, and they'll go in and try and do the pitching dance to the client, and then eventually, quite often it comes down to price, personal preference, what the chairman's wife thinks, and so on and so forth. And actually then, even if you won the business with your A team, the A team doesn't deliver it. So you're going to let the client down, and your B team is busy working on the clients that you've got in the business. So I always used to say this exactly to the clients. I said, well, why do you want us to pitch? We've got our credentials, we've got our credibility. Come and talk to us, come and see us as the agency. If you want to work with us and we want to work with you, it's a great fit and we're going to do absolutely fantastic. And then that moves on to the next part of it, because quite often what you do in a pitch moves on to how the actual work happens. And that's sort of when the honeymoon period is over. And you get into the actual work, and problems happen, and client wants to change things and things like that. And that's when most smart agencies actually have a very rigorous procedure of going through phases and gates. So phase one is this. When that's done, you can't revisit it unless you want to revisit it and respec it. So once you pass phase one, you can't revisit it. Then you're on to phase two. Once that's done, you're on to phase three, phase four, phase five, phase six, however you break up the project. But if you just leave it as one phase project, then the client will always be diving back, 4 weeks down the line. So, well, actually, we want to change that. And that has to change everything. And they say, well, we're not going to pay for it. Surely you should have known we're going to change things. So, yeah, well, come on, this happens every day, doesn't it? Sorry, yeah. James, remind me of the third question.
And the third was firing and sacking your customers. And just quickly, before I move on to that, number one, I'm interested because that's so valuable information about pitching and not pitching. And I wonder who because that's such valuable content, but I wonder, everybody who's watching, who that's more valuable to. Is it more valuable to the agencies or actual businesses themselves?
Well, both. I mean,
yeah,
to be honest,
absolutely.
I think it's more valuable to the business, because the business should do more due diligence before they select the agency. Go and interview them, go and see them, go and see all of the staff, go and see the team. Then you know who you're dealing with, because you shouldn't judge an agency just on an idea they come up with in a pitch, because quite frankly, they don't know enough about you when they've done that pitch. You only start to get under the skin of a client after, say, month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, year 1, year 2, before you start really understanding them. Mm. So how can they possibly come up with the greatest idea on the planet in a pitch? They can't. It's impossible.
Yeah. It also makes a lot of sense for the agency to use the A team to go out hunting in the pitches.
Yeah, of course.
But if that's what they're doing, then they can't then deliver the day job.
Exactly.
It makes a logical sense, but also it's just it's set up to fail, isn't it?
It is, and that's why most projects go wrong. Because the A team isn't delivering the project; they're delivering the pitch.
Yeah.
And sacking your customers.
Yeah, well, we touched on this before. If they become an energy vampire and they really are sucking the lifeblood out of you and behaving badly, then this is going to take an inordinate amount of time just to keep the relationship alive. And sometimes you just cut your losses and say, well, look, to them and yourselves, look, this isn't working. We need to part ways. Because if you've got, the agency relationships change all the time. You go from the honeymoon period into the hate mode when things are not going very well in the project, to the delight mode when the project's delivered and it's working as everyone expected it to. But inevitably there are certain times when the relationship gets to such a stage where they're leaning on you too much. You can't work with them because you've lost communication with them. You've just got to cut your losses, I'm afraid. From both sides as well, of course, works for both.
Interesting. And is it that old saying you give someone an inch, they'll take a mile? I've got experience.
Yeah, that's managing the relationship, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, customers are customers and they want what they want. But if you turn around and fight your ground and say, well, actually, you've asked for this and this is what you want, but actually we believe that this is what you need, which is a different conversation again. You should always deliver what a client needs, not what they want, because that's your expertise, that's your job. Mm-hmm. That's when problems start, is when you do what the client wants and it doesn't work, and the client says, well, why don't you tell me? Well, no, but this is all part of this retreating to the core, because these are all the fundamental things in any business. We're talking about agency world here, but this applies in all businesses, all sort of like B2B customer relationship businesses, and some B2C, business to consumer ones as well. Of course, I mean, this is when just get back on the another thing to look at when you retreat into the core is just look at your service set and your product set, and just say, well, actually, is it fit for purpose any longer? Because inevitably, there's always products which are on the up. You know they are. The price is still there. The price is still there for the service. The price is still there for the product. Yeah, and it's got a longevity. People will still want this in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Do more of that. But you'll also have some services or products within your inventory which actually are on the way down. There's a more price pressure on them. It's more ubiquitous. It's more of rather than being a specialist, it's more of a commodity, and do less of that. So you've got to keep doing this all the time. This is standard stuff which you must do, but even more important when your back's against the wall and the pressure's on. I mean, a little technique that I use is, and this is something I do all the time, is I'd list them and give them a mark out of 10. If it's a 10, yeah, do more of that. And if it's down towards a 1, well, let's get rid of that as soon as possible. Or an easy one to remember in 4 points is, when you look at something in a service or a product, should we amplify it? Should we modify it? Should we keep it? Or should we ditch it? That's a really easy thing to do. And any business analysis, when you reflect on your business, you should always be doing that. But this is my favorite one. And I did invent this. All the stuff I've been talking about before is just modified from things that I've heard or other interesting gurus. This one is to beware of tomato soup and beige. Because if you do your market research to such an nth degree to actually find something which doesn't offend anybody, you'll end up selling tomato soup or beige paint, because it really is not. It's not offensive.
Yeah, well,
tomato soup and beige.
But I guess there's a risk to company identity. Is that there? If you analyze. If your company is built on a product or a service which is not profitable, but is actually your identity, or certainly your original identity, I guess it's also being open to change, to pivot away from what you maybe historically were to what you now need to be.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about pivoting and things like that, and I always say beware the pivot, because the minute you pivot and go and do something that's not your core, or potentially you don't understand anything about, you are going away from your original strategy, and that's really dangerous. Because you might just hit a brick wall or fall off a cliff. You just don't know. So beware the pivot for sure. But actually, what I'm sort of recommending is that you're always changing. You should be doing these techniques all the time. And whether that's a period of every month, every 6 months, every 12 months, every year, every 2 years, it doesn't really matter, but you must do it frequently. I mean, just to give you an example from Strawberry, about 15 years ago, something like 60 to 70% of our business was in multi-page brochures, catalogs, magazines. I mean, we did shed loads of the stuff. I mean, really did, to a really high level. But I just said to the guys, I said, this is not going to last, because I'd seen the price pressure. I've seen the downward spiral. I'd seen websites coming in. So you're not going to need a 400-page catalog when you've got a website. So we actually got out of that business within 12 months, pretty much.
Right.
Just because the writing was on the wall. So we marked it, and it was down in the low 1, 2, 3s. It wasn't a 10, whereas websites and e-commerce was high. So let's do more of those, and let's do less of the multi-page. So it's a slow switch.
Yeah.
I mean, even to the point that you actually don't notice it happening. It just sort of like happens. But of course, it doesn't happen unless you do it.
You spoke about the risk of pivoting there, Jonathan, and I know what stands out for me is Sir David Hall, a member of For Entrepreneurs Only. Yeah. He's a major award winner. And
yeah.
Yeah, and also, I mean, just it's the thing, if people aren't aware of For Entrepreneurs Only, go online, and there's loads of free resources on their website from David Hall. So, and they're incredible. I would really recommend going to those.
They are fantastic. Yeah, highly
absolutely
recommend.
Fantastic. And my point being, it was David Hall's seminar that he delivered to FEO members. And I remember it, and he said the percentage of people that pivot into a new industry that are successful are 10%. That's always stood out for me. That was within my first year of business, I think, when the first year or 24 months. And I remember thinking, but also off the back of that, I remember thinking, that's not going to be me. It's like, there's a challenge. But this subject of this episode is retreating to the core. And you just tapped on it there. I'm sure it's no surprise someone who's very optimistic is I'm keen on this amplification. What do we need to amplify an area of the business or the business as a whole? So we are talking about retreating to the core, but let's touch on like an easy win, something that resonates with a number of your clients and your network about how to amplify your business.
Well, anybody who watches this webinar can do it immediately. All they need to do is write down what they do. Write down all their services or products or whatever they are, as many as they can possibly do, and just do a score against it. Just use their intuition to score it. And they can score it in 3 parts. Has it got longevity? Is it easy to do and replicate? Is it profitable? And mark that out of 10. And just see which ones come to the top. And I know exactly what the answers will be, by the way. They'll know it themselves. It's just proving it to themselves. And you can do it, James. You can do it, Phil, because this will just prove what you already know, but you never do anything about it.
Yeah. By identifying it, you're more likely.
Exactly. When it's there in black and white in front of you, you go, right, okay, yeah, the penny's dropped. I get it now. So all that stuff down at the bottom, the stuff that floats to the top, do more of. The stuff that goes down the bottom, don't do. It's as simple as that. I mean, there are arguments to say that some of the stuff down the bottom actually does pay for some of the overheads, but that's a lazy excuse, because what they mean by that is that it pays for stuff that I don't want to fix. I don't want to get in and fix. I mean, I'll give you another couple of examples on that. And this is a really good one. In the last decade or so, Asda significantly reduced its depth of products, sometimes to actually only 1, 2 or 3 choices. Whereas before, if you go into Waitrose and you want a can of tomatoes, well, you're presented with 15 different varieties, and you can pay from a bespoke single vineyard in tomato in northern Italy, and you can pay £10 a can, or you can go for their value brand for 50p. All right, the choice is there. But when there's too much choice, it's confusing. And there is actually a very good book about the paradox of choice, why less is good, is a good thing. So Asda completely, I think they went down from, I'm just guessing this, but it gives you an example. They went down from, say, 10,000 SKUs or different product lines to 2,000. Did it make any difference to their business? Massively. It didn't make any difference to their sales, but it made a huge difference to their logistics.
Yeah.
And the amount of stock that they were carrying, because suddenly all of their stock became fast turnaround stock and stuff they could easily get and stuff that they could easily put under their own brand name, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So, and then another thing, of course, how do you determine a brilliant restaurant or a great restaurant? You go into one of the best restaurants, you'll have 5 starters, 5 main courses, 5 puddings to choose from. If you go to an average restaurant, you'll have 10 starters to choose from, 10 main courses, 10 puddings. You go to a terrible restaurant, you'll have 30 choices for a starter, 30 main courses, and they can't possibly produce any of those to a quality which is any good. So that's sort of like another reason why. So all of these people know that if you cut back to what you really understand and really good at, and what gets a 7, 8, 9 out of 10 from longevity, quality, profitability, easy to do, then that's why they do it. So, but here's a good thing. From doing this, suddenly you get some really uncomfortable truths. And I just by pure fluke, it just happened across this conversation I had on Monday afternoon. I was at the golf course and I was chatting to, he's a chairman of 2 very well-known businesses. I won't mention who they are. But very, very well-known and superbly successful businesses. And we're just having a chat about all things around COVID and things like that. And he was telling me an example of a factory that's reopened in Scunthorpe, I think it's a food factory, I'm not entirely sure, with 50% of its team actually going to the factory. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending which way you look at it, at 80% productivity. So they're managing to run an 80% of productivity for a 100% factory with half the team.
Yeah.
So that's an uncomfortable truth. So once you actually get through all of your list of service and products and things like that, you'll suddenly think, well, actually, we don't need what we've got. You know, we actually have to resize the business. I mean, I know there's a terrible euphemism called right sizing. I mean, I know that generally means redundancies, but it's absolutely critical that you match your business and your resources to your strategy. It's sort of, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? But you should definitely do that.
I mean, none more so than office space, right? That's just like, now Zoom, I was watching a seminar the other day, and I mean, Zoom has gone from, if you look at it in terms of, to put it in scale, Zoom before COVID-19 users were New York City. And now it's the entire population of America on a daily basis. That's global figures, but that puts it into perspective. And I dare say Zoom's responsible for a lot of people now looking at streamlining. You spoke about streamlining their productivity and overheads and stuff like that. And it's just like, I think it's going to be interesting, and it'll be an attractive challenge to see how office spaces come up with creative ways of marketing, of getting people through the door. And I think that's, we've already seen that in recent times with office spaces. Open plan co-working spaces, unlimited teas and coffees, free seminars within the building. And, are those guys ahead of the curve and going to come out of this winning? And we'll see, how, those office buildings that, with their historic ways of marketing and providing services are going to pivot as well.
Yeah.
But what's your thoughts on that, Jonathan?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, inevitably, obviously, this is going to take a long time to wash through because people have got leases and long-term leases. But I definitely think, and certainly a few of the agencies that I talked to, and so, well, actually, looking at our space, we don't need half of it. Because actually, if we worked a bit smarter and rotated the team, because the team likes to work from, rather than having I've got a client who, rather than having a £3,000 a month office in Lincoln, they've got a £500 shared workspace in Lincoln, and the team rotate. So, immediately you've got that money goes straight on the bottom line. It's an easy way to increase your net profit, isn't it? But then again, there are challenges with managing a remote team as well. So, there's always a payoff.
I wonder how that also taps in. I know previously you said where within your agency where you would have new blood coming into the team. So you'd have people leaving and people joining. And that was often the case because you had a sizable team. And how that actually, you could look at that, it's a negative, people are leaving, but you looked at that as a positive because you've got new blood coming in with excitement and creativity. And I wonder if you could employ the same mindset within a flexible working environment. If you've got some working remotely and some coming through, could you
I guess probably it's an interesting point you make there, just about the younger ones coming in, starting their careers. Of course, they need what they benefit from is mentoring, and if they can't have that working remotely, so they would suffer. That draws a line under that, really. So I think there's definitely going to be hybrids. There's no question about it. I think there are certain teams that can work better remotely than before. I mean, Twitter, what they're going to work remotely forever, aren't they? They've just declared that.
Yeah. I think there's something about the basic human need, though, isn't there, which is missing if you don't have a central point where people can.
Yeah, of course. It's culture, it's belief, it's strategy, it's how the team works, it's how the business operates, everything. Yeah.
So I can see why downsizing from 3,000 to 500 is an efficiency, but I don't think you can go further than that without then being detrimental out the other side.
Yes, well, exactly. I mean, what we've talked about today is is just common, is common business sense. But common business sense is very uncommon because people just get busy. And when the tide is rising, everybody goes up with the tide. It's just that when things start to become difficult, then people have to do this thing, but they should do it all the time. This is the important thing. And actually, I mean, imagine, and this is my final word on this, if you like, is imagine if you could tune up your business, understanding every facet of the business, and you could turn say a 10% net profit into a 30% net profit. Imagine, and you can do it.
Yeah.
Well, let's before we close it, where can people find you, Jonathan? If you can remind our audience where
just leafe.co.uk, which is Leafe with an E.
Awesome, thank you. And yes, this has been Retreating to the Core, ready to go again, and it's been great that we've touched on amplifying the business and your practices, because next week's episode is going for high growth after lockdown. So we've covered slowing down, reviewing, analytics. So I'm excited for next week's. It's about setting ourselves up through this part series that we've worked on for high growth after lockdown. I mean, sure, there's lots of people out there that have been working hard, developing new skills themselves or within their team, ready for this, ready to come out stronger. That's something that's continued with our not only with our interviewees, but our audience as well, and our wider network. So thanks, Jonathan, for joining us once again, and we'll look forward to having you on next week.
Yeah, pleasure, absolute pleasure. And I'll see you, James, Phil.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan. Cheers.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Business Lockdown.
Please comment, like, share, and subscribe to help build our global community.
We look forward to seeing you all soon.